afternoon, Frank.
Hello, Professor. How are you?
I think there's a number of things that happened in the last few days that bring to our attention something that has sort of been on our agenda for some time, but it's been not at the center of our attention.
Mm-hmm.
These unplanned, supposedly terrorist attacks in how many different countries? England, America, France, now Niger today. And then, of course, I just heard an hour-long speech of President Obama. It's interesting that he should have timed it for today. I'm sure it's pure chance, but it's something that there's been more and more pressure on him to do for some time. I think we're approaching a point where a lot of decisions are going to have to be made about just exactly what American and European and other major foreign policies should be with regard to our understanding of terrorism.
Right.
Because it's, if you trace terrorism back to its modern beginnings, not back to the old man of the mountains years ago, but the late 1960s and the IRA, who I think started it, although the Palestinians tend to get more of the blame for it. Then it's gone through phases. To begin with, it was targeted specific situations which had an explanation. And then it became generalized international activity like 9/11. So I mean, the change from even the first World Trade Center bombing to 9/11 was a significant change. First, was it 94 or 93?
I believe it was 93.
When there was an identified group of people planting bombs in the World Trade Center. That's relatively specific. That's the sort of thing you can guard against. Whereas then 9/11 was a group of people that, even though it turns out we didn't know a lot about them before, or I'm not sure whether all of them, but most of them, each starting from different places on planes, a project that was planned somewhere in another part of the world, and converged within half an hour on the World Trade Center with other planes aiming at similar strategic points in Washington, and causing an incredible number of deaths. And then since then it's become more international, more random, more unpredictable, and even with people actually publishing on the internet the idea that if you sympathize with us, just go out and kill somebody.
Right.
And what happened in London appears to have been a very good example of that, although, of course, we're still finding out more about what really was going on, but it seems as though a couple of people decided they were just going to hack to death a serving British soldier whom they happened to find,
right,
and invited passers-by to take account of what they were doing, because now everybody was going to do this sort of thing. And then, of course, the man who was under questioning by the FBI and the CIA yesterday, and just suddenly broke out and
killed himself.
Yeah, targeted them, and then
they shoot death by police. Yeah,
what all this leads up to is whatever its major intention is. It's the main reaction to it is, which may be part of the intention, is to increase communal discord especially in Europe, if not in America as well. It's a way of creating social disorder in the Western world.
Do you really think so?
Well, that's what people are hypothesizing.
I'm not so sure about that.
Let me just say why that is the reason that's being hypothesized. the the argument is that what this does more successfully than anything else is turn people against Muslims, and it does have that effect. Now, whether it has that effect strongly enough to create communal discord, we have to wait and see. But Cameron's obviously scared of that happening. And you hear people saying things in anticipation of that possibility in this country. There's certainly so much dissatisfaction with immigration in Europe.
Right. Well, yeah, there's been those civil disturbances in Sweden over the shooting of
the Sweden event is yet another one.
Of a 69-year-old immigrant.
Was there more last night on that?
I think last night was finally quiet, but they had, I believe, 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
So
I know that they had more police out on the streets in anticipation last night. Yeah. I didn't hear what actually happened.
I mean, it's funny in some ways. I mean, this is almost Bin Laden's dream, this kind of retail terrorism that's begun to happen. But in another way, I think that what's begun to happen is on a small scale like this. Small, it's not small if you're the one killed or related to the people killed. It's almost become a little bit like American Airlines having their planes hijacked to Cuba in the 1970s. It begins to happen every week. So after a while, it's not that noticeable. It's not a particularly big event. And I believe, and this is the part where I might disagree with you a little bit, at least in this country, I do not think that there is any anti-Islam or anti-Muslim kind of sense that's being engendered by this, because it's so patently obvious with each of these events that the people who are perpetrating them are misfits and outcasts. And I mean, I could draw a direct line right through all of them that have occurred on these smaller scales. And I think that what's begun to happen is 2 things have happened. I think in some respects, I think the horizontal decentralization of Islam itself, as its nature, makes it difficult for the West to reach out to a structure to hate. I mean, it would be one thing if this was like Opus Dei perpetrating these things. Everybody could gang up on the Vatican, on the Pope, but you can't quite get that singularity of attack for people who are being distracted by the second thing, which is the immense upsurge in global communication that are going on. And that also contributes to the distraction. But what it also does is, in some ways, it vaccinates against the demonization idea of an ethnic group or a social group that's perhaps involved or engendered the people that have caused these killings. And I was struck by this. It occurred to me where this came from. The riots in Sweden, beginning on Saturday night, were a result of common dissatisfaction, not necessarily with the immigration policy, but with what they believed was an incident of police brutality, who, when they killed a 69-year-old man who was an immigrant, who was in his apartment with a knife, all right? And regular Swedes, all right, regular blonde-haired Swedish...
Machete.
Well, knife, machete, but he was in his apartment. I mean, what the heck? What the hell do I care what he has in his apartment?
So what were they doing in his apartment?
I don't know. But the point that got me was that regular Swedish people were out committing violence, burning up cars, protesting against the police who had brutally, quote unquote, brutally killed this 69-year-old immigrant.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, wait a minute. That's sort of a little different. I mean, why wouldn't they be like rioting against immigrants, taking away their rights and did their slice of the Swedish welfare state? It struck me as very interesting.
I think that Sweden is the most tolerant.
Very much so.
Of these cases, and I don't think that this is going to have communal implications in Sweden, but the fact that it happened in Sweden is fueling this sort of thing in other parts of Europe. And I think in America it's not happening either, but you have to remember that after 9/11, people who looked vaguely Muslim, even though in some cases they were Sikhs from India, were targeted.
No, but not really though. I mean,
Well, it happened.
they were pulled out of line waiting to get on airplanes. Yeah, and
No, they're attacked in the street. Um, and certainly there's been profiling in this country in the airlines, airline security and that sort of thing. But the main problem is in Europe. And the reason that the main problem is in Europe is that that's where there are these large ghetto communities of immigrants from the Muslim world
oh
that
no,
are disadvantaged.
I
And we have to remember that don't forget that I'm the optimist, right? I'm not saying that this is going to happen. I'm saying these are the arguments that have begun to emerge over the last couple of days in the media, both here but mainly in Europe.
I do not dispute that. However, all I would say is that precisely because this pattern is reaping fruit amongst this group slash class of disaffected people, the more these incidents occur, and the perpetrators of these incidents are, as more truth is revealed and facts are revealed about them, people, I think, communally begin to go, wow, boy, they were crazy. I mean, what a nut. I mean, and it doesn't necessarily matter if they're Muslim or from Chechnya or from wherever. It's just somebody who has had trouble integrating themselves into the modern world. And as we know, as you've taught me in your classes that I've attended, I was going to use another verb, but to your classes, I mean, this is where the most fertile ground is for the teachings of groups such as Al Qaeda. Young Muslim men who feel disaffected because they can't fit into this tidal wave of Western society that's coming at them, feeling that the bonds that bonded them together culturally and tribally are being frayed, and Islam presents itself as an opportunity to grab onto something, and then from there it's off to the races.
Yes, but no, what you're saying is exactly correct. But in each of these cases, as far as we can see, it has to do with an increased amount of movement back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Between Europe and America on the one hand, and different parts of the Muslim world on the other. And the idea that there is something to be fought against, which individuals on their own, who may be just misfits, can do something about. And then they finish up essentially sacrificing themselves. But if this sort of phenomenon continues to increase, then it begins to take on a different quality, and the way people think about it begins to be different. And you may be right that it may become common a garden and people take no notice of it. And I can imagine that sort of thing happening, because I think that when you've got a world of 8, 9 billion, possibly more people, and so much information, so much going on, so much interaction, so much travel, there are bound to be a lot of unfortunate things that happen, and most people won't be involved in them.
Right.
And people will not be thinking so much in local terms, and most of the reactions to this sort of thing that we see at the moment are reactions in local terms. So somebody from outside is disrupting what we are used to on a local basis. And I think that way of thinking about life is going to change.
Well, there's two tendencies here. At its root essence, what the Islamic terrorists, are reacting against is this leavening or homogenization of global society, and the loss of identity, and the real strong reluctance and unwillingness to get involved in that and trying to hold on to it at any cost. But meanwhile, it's happening. We talk about it every week. It's happening. It's an immutable tidal wave that's coming. No government, no one group, no person can stand in its way. And as it keeps happening, and as these events keep occurring, and the perpetrators are publicized, and for example, all right, I had some sympathy. I initially, with the Boston Marathon bomber, I went from revulsion initially, to some sympathy about him, just the poor young kid and his brother. And then I saw the mother interview from Dagestan with the father. And I was like, oh my God, they're crazy. I mean, they're coming out of this like cloistered environment where they know nothing else. The children were poisoned from the beginning in some respects. And I just sort of shrugged and I tuned it off. I viewed it as a localized event. Now, of course, it's not a localized event because something happened in Orlando. Something similar happened in Woolwich in London.
Woolwich, yeah.
Something similar keeps happening. But I guess my point is that I don't view it as being inspired by anything other than just people who are disaffected because they're having trouble adjusting to this increasing homogenization of society. If they were home in their villages in Chechnya 100 years ago, they'd probably be milking a cow and they'd be happy. But they're not. They're not. They're living in Boston and they're married to a girl from North Jersey and they have an American son.
Look at the other side of it. I agree with what you're saying. However, there is another sort of reaction at the same time. There's the people who want their lives to remain undisturbed as they were before and don't like outsiders and don't like immigrants. And these incidents get used for their arguments against immigrants. And so on the one hand, you've got the current stage we're in of a process of social change in which more and more people are moving around.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that all Frenchmen are in France, all Germans are in Germany, all Czechs are in Czechoslovakia and so on, is becoming out of date. On the other hand, there is a growing concern about people from outside disturbing my way of living.
Mm-hmm.
And that's producing a sort of hurdle that we've got to get across. And just exactly how and when we're going to get across it, I don't know. And one thing that bothered me about President Obama's speech from 2 to 3 o'clock this afternoon was that it was a fantastic speech. Really, I mean, especially since there was something totally extempore that happened in the middle of it. There was a woman who started shouting at him.
Really?
And he put up with her. And he managed her extremely well. And then she got so impossible that she must have been escorted out of the room because she kept shouting louder and louder, and gradually it sounded as though it was further and further away. And then he said, what I'm going to say now is off my script.
Oh, really?
And he actually said that you have freedom of speech, but freedom of speech involves freedom to listen as well. And so you have to listen to what I have to say as well. And he said a few more things like that, which were very well done on the moment. But nevertheless, the whole message was, we can control the rest of the world. And all we've got to do is to work out more carefully how we're going to do it. And I think that's got to change as well, because I think we're losing the ability to control the rest of the world.
Do you think if we had President Obama on this call, would he agree that the whole message of his speech was that we're in control?
No, I think he would, if he was certain that we weren't on the air.
Yes.
Which, of course, he knows he can never be sure of.
Of course.
That he would say that he represents the American people. And this is the way the American people think, and he has to represent them realistically. And we are obviously the superpower in the world, and he has to act like the head of the superpower.
Okay.
So on the one hand, he's withdrawing from Afghanistan, withdrawn from Iraq, and trying to do everything else in a much more low-key way than was done in the Bush era. But at the same time, he's doing his best to make sure that anybody in Congress and the people who vote for people in Congress who want to say that he's not acting like the head of a superpower, that he can point to things that he is doing that are still superpower.
Well, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the speech. I'm gonna do that.
I must admit, it's very rare for me to listen to one person talking for a whole hour. I usually fall asleep apart from anything else, but I sat in the car after I got to where I needed to go.
Oh, you did?
Continued to listen to it because I thought it was so well done.
Oh, that says a lot to me, actually. All right. Okay.
And I certainly wouldn't have done that for Bush.
No. Well, Bush would never have spoken for an hour. No. Well, all right, Professor. Thank you very much. I wish you a pleasant Memorial Day holiday.
Yes.
It's also a bank holiday in Britain on Monday.
Yes.
Yeah, one of those few times that coincide, and we'll look to reconvene next week.
See you on the 2nd of June.
I believe it is.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.